Hi folks, I'm very pleased to say it is book haul time once more. Having been freed from book jail, where I bought no books, kind of, during January, I'm unleashed once again on the bookshops of England. And I have a bunch here to cover from a few different sources, so let's just get stuck in. First one I actually ordered in December, mid-December, but it didn't arrive until about mid-January. I don't know why it took quite so long to get organised, but it's arrived. It's a pan lozenge. It's the third of the 3-decade anthologies. So this is the 1960s. The other two were also edited by Brian Aldiss and Harry Harrison. This one contains some stories by, let's see, Kurt Vonnegut, Thomas Dish, Brian Aldiss, Keith Roberts, Keith Lormer, all the Keiths, Roger Zelazny, Moorcock, Silverberg, Pole, Dick, Spinrad, and Kingsley Amis, of all people. And there's an interesting story by J.G. Ballard, which is the assassination of John Fitzgerald Kennedy considered as a downhill motor race, which is quite a mouthful. It's another addition to my pan lozenge collection, which is awesome. And then I mentioned this the other day on my weekly update. So I was very, very excited to receive, about a week ago, 5 books in the post that I hadn't ordered, and I wondered where they'd come from. It turns out they were sent to me by Bruce of Toronto, Canada, who's a viewer of his channel, and he had got stuck into my Amazon wishlist, and on that I had a set of 5 books by Pierce Brown, which form the first 5 of the Red Rising series, which I haven't read, and I hear good things about. I hear that Red Rising, which is the first of the series, is the weakest, and they just get stronger and stronger as things go on. This one is billed as sort of Hunger Games on Mars, and has young adult overtones, apparently, kind of, but the others quickly get grittier and more adult in tone, so I understand. So I'd really like to read them, otherwise I wouldn't have put them on my wish list, but I'm much more excited about having received them than I am about reading them. I'm really grateful to you, Bruce, for sending them to me. It means a lot, and I really appreciate it. So the other 4, some of which are pretty chunky, are, is that the right way up? No, there we go. So I think they go in that order. So it's Golden Sun, Morning Star, Iron something, Iron Gold, and Dark Age. It serves me right for trying to read them backwards. So there's some chunky books there, and I think I'm right in saying that the 6th book is either, I think also the final book is either out just now or about to be. So I'll be able to pick that up when it comes out in paperback as well for the matching set. Awesome, thank you again, Bruce. And then on Friday, just gone, a few days back, I took a half day off of work and drove a couple of hours down the motorway to deepest, darkest Wiltshire to it's better known as an online shop called allyouneedisbooks.co.uk, and it also trades as zardos.co.uk, and it sells mainly science fiction, but not exclusively science fiction books online, and mostly of the vintage variety. And I had heard tell that they had a stash of books that they don't list online because they're duplicates or not sufficiently good quality to sell online, that were piled up in their office, essentially all for £1 each, which seemed like too good an opportunity to miss. So I headed down there yesterday, and after a bit of logistical shenanigans, I was set free amongst the books, and I half intended to take some footage while I was there, but it didn't seem appropriate in their office environment to do that. But suffice to say, there were, I don't know, maybe 10 floor-to-ceiling bookcases full of mainly vintage science fiction. There were a few fantasy books there as well, but mainly vintage science fiction. So as you can imagine, faced with the choice of hundreds, maybe even thousands of books to buy, it was a little bit discombobulating. But I decided that I would, rather than be a complete magpie about it, I would be discerning. And although there are some slightly dog-eared books in here, generally speaking, if they weren't in really nice condition, approaching mint, then I just left them behind, and I only picked the ones that were in good nick or that I was particularly interested in. And so there are 34 books to go through here, so let's get stuck in. So the first one is, and I've actually forgotten to a large extent what I bought, so this is going to be a bit of a surprise to me as I go through them. So there's All the Colours of Darkness by Lloyd Biggle Jr. This is an old book. It's priced in shillings and pence, so it'll be from the 1960s, I imagine. Let's see, early 60s, in fact, 64. So this one is set in the distant future of 1986, in the form of the Universal Transmitting Company. We've discovered the matter transmitter, a means of ferrying people to and from all parts of the globe in a split second. But on the second day of commercial operations, 2 women mysteriously fail to reach their destinations. Their identification is checked and found to be false, and no relatives or friends come forward to complain. So it's kind of a detective tale, really. Who were these women? Where did they go? I like the sound of that, and it was in good condition, so I kept it. Next is Alien, which is the novelisation of the movie by Alan Dean Foster. I've actually got somewhere on my shelves a triple bill of the novelisations, all by Alan Dean Foster, of Alien, Aliens, and the third one, Aliens 3 or whatever it's called, which is quite a nice book, but I couldn't resist the temptation to buy the singleton standalone Alien on its own. I have fond memories of that movie when I went to my best friend's 10th or 11th birthday party, and the main attraction was the showing of Alien. I don't know what his parents were thinking. I was terrified and had nightmares for weeks. I watched it from behind the sofa between my fingers. It has stuck with me, so I must have enjoyed it. Next I got Venus Equilateral, volumes 1 and 2, which, if I remember rightly, are short stories. They are set on a sort of spaceport or hub, which is in orbit somewhere, I guess around Venus, and it's kind of like a truck stop or a scientific station, I featured these books in one of my space opera videos. I forget which decade it would have been, probably the 60s or 70s, maybe even. But let's see what it says. A space station planet in the orbit of Venus, so yes, around Venus, the nerve centre of the solar system. Venus Equilateral is manned by Dr. Don Channing and a crew of tough, wily engineers who are dedicated to maintaining their vital relay point for interplanetary messages against all comers. In this second volume, so this is the second volume I'm reading from, the station battles to keep its beams open against the forces of science, piracy, and the menacing Terran Electric. So they are short stories, they are engineering problems that need to be solved, and allegedly a good read. So I was pleased to pick those up. It is, I broke my rule about only buying really nice condition books because I really wanted to read these, and I don't have a copy. They are a bit flaky in condition. The next one I found, which I was really pleased to find, is the Granada from the 80s edition of Hot House by Brian Aldiss. This is a book that I featured in my Sentient Plants video from, I don't know, 6 months back, and I've been looking out for a copy of it ever since. This is set on a far distant Earth, millions of years in the future, where weird and scientifically implausible things have happened to Earth's orbit and the Moon's orbit, for that matter, and humanity has evolved down to being sort of knee-height creatures. The plant life is now sentient and abundant on the half of the planet that is facing the sun, and it says on the back here, the sun is going nova, and in the boughs of the immense banyan tree that covers one face of the earth, the last pitiful remnants of humanity battle for survival with huge carnivorous plants and grotesque insect life. Like I say, it's scientifically utter nonsense, but allegedly the writing in it is beautiful, so I'm looking forward to that. Next I got Analog Men by Damien Knight, which is a very heavy book. For a slender book, it's pretty heavy, so it's on good paper, I think. And this is I think a short story collection. No, I'm talking nonsense. It is a novel, and it is from 1967, this edition anyway. It is in Sphere, beg your pardon. It's in not terrible condition. It's got a bit of a tear on the front, but it was Damien Knight and I was interested. He's mainly known for his short stories, so I was intrigued by the prospect of a novel. Sticking with short stories, I was really happy to find, in not bad condition, I would say it's probably good rather than very good, but is 10,000 Light Years from Home, which is a James Tiptree Jr. short story collection, I believe. 15 scintillating voyages through space and time, including Faithful to Thee, Terror in Our Fashion, The Man Doors Said Hello To, and then And I Awoke and Found Me Here on the Cold Hill Side. I think those are the titles of the stories. Yes. So James Tiptree Jr. is an author on my list of shame this year. I will attempt to knock off. I've got the other of the 2 books of hers that are in the Pan Lozenge set, which the Up the Walls of the World, I think it's called, another short story collection. I think I'm right in saying that she almost entirely wrote short stories. There might be one novel or novella, I don't recall, but mostly short stories, a little bit like Damon Knight. So really happy to find that. It's pretty hard to get hold of in good condition. Can't be bad. And then a less vintage book, although it does hail from the 80s, is the second, or maybe it's the third book of the Uplift sequence. So the first is Sundiver, I think, and then the second, which I don't have, and then the second, which I do have, is Startide Rising. Now this master storyteller returns us to this extraordinary wonder-filled world. Drawing on the startling events of Startide, he tells a tale of courage, survival and discovery. As galactic armadas clash in a quest of the ancient fleet of the progenitors, a brutal alien race seizes the dying planet of Garth. The various uplifted inhabitants of Garth must battle their overlords or face ultimate extinction, and at stake is the existence of Terran society and Earth, and the fate of the entire 5 galaxies. Sweeping, brilliantly crafted, inventive and dramatic, The Uplift War is an unforgettable story of adventure and wonder from the pen of one of today's SF greats. So I have books 2 and 3, but not book 1, rather unhelpfully. I think I'm right in saying that Startide Rising was written first and then Sundiver was written as a prequel, so maybe I can get away with reading Startide Rising and that one. Next I found, in a very slightly old and faded bag, is Philip Jose Farmer's Traitor to the Living. This is a panther from the early to mid-70s, I would say. Don't know much about it. I'm yet to read a Philip Jose Farmer book, although I do have To Your Scattered Bodies Go on my TBR for this month, so I will soon be getting stuck in to my first one. I found, which is actually an uncorrected proof, not for sale, copy of Greg Egan's Incandescence. I've got several of these Greg Egan books in this livery, in this large trade paperback size, so for £1 it seemed rude not to pick it up, even if it does have typos and spelling mistakes. Next I found a Panther science fiction copy of The Chalk Giants by Keith Roberts. You don't often see Keith Roberts books out in the wild, so I was pleased to get this, and somewhere in here is another of his too. We'll get to it eventually. And so this one is after the set of post-apocalyptic. After the apocalypse, the hazardous evolution of mankind continues, and in primeval response to the disaster, humanity's solutions to catastrophe carve the harsh new world in violent patterns of magic and myth, rite and religion. Brave images scar the ancient hills. The clash of swords and the ageless power of sexuality signpost to another blood-soaked path to civilization. Keith Roberts has written a haunting and provocative epic of stunning imaginative power. In The Chalk Giants, times to come take on the awesome dimensions of prehistoric myth. In our future lies our past, and in our past, our future. It's a little bit damaged, unfortunately, but for £1 and for Keith Roberts, who am I to complain? Next, they had quite a few of the new writings in SF books. I'm only missing a few, and I managed to get 2 of them. I'm not sure where the other one is. I'm still missing 2 or 3, I think, but otherwise I have a full set. So this is number 8, which hails from the 1960s, 66 to be precise. So that's got 7 stories in it. John Carnell, Colin Knapp, other people I haven't heard of, and Keith Roberts, in fact. There's a short story by Keith Roberts in here. I bought that more for completeness sake than it being particularly attractive in its own right. Another anthology, Orbit 4, edited by Damon Knight, who we've come across once or twice now already. This is the 4th collection of all new science fiction stories by new and established authors, specially commissioned by Damon Knight for his adventurous Orbit series. So there is work here by Silverberg, Harlan Ellison, R.A. Lafferty, Werner Vinge, must be an early Vinge, the early 1970s. Must be, it's priced 30p, so it would be 72, 73, that sort of time. Very good stories indeed. A far more outstanding collection of SF than could be found in any current or recent past magazine. Happy days. And then I found in this very nice Fontana, I do like these Fontana editions, Brian Stableford, what's it called? The Mind Riders. The best man always wins. The best handler, that is. The boxers slugging it out in the ring were just holographs, patterns of light, but to millions of network viewers, They are genuine flesh and blood. They looked real, and with an e-link between the handler controlling the sim and the viewer's mind, you could actually feel them emotionally, their anger, excitement and power, even their fear and crushing sense of defeat. After the fight, when the hollows faded out and the handlers took off their headsets, the boxers ceased to exist. There were no scars to heal except mental ones, and Network wasn't interested in things like that. But for years, one handler had been tortured by painful memories of a previous fight, so much so that when he came back to the ring for the last time, he was fighting not just to win, but to regain honour and self-respect in a world that he had ceased to believe in. Sounds interesting. I read my first Brian Stableford this last month, Halcyon Drift, which was one of the Star Pilot Granger books, but that sounds interesting too. And then in another pan lozenge, which is somewhat an upgrade. So I have a very tatty copy of this, which somebody gave me. And so whilst this isn't mint or even very good by any means, it is in better condition than the one that I have. So I'll pass that one on and replace it on my shelves with this one. Accomplished and gripping, this is one of the most famous stories that Heinlein has written and remains an acknowledged masterpiece. A race of strange slug-like invaders from another planet bring with them the threat of mass hypnosis in its most diabolical form. Humanity must fight for its very existence. So says the back of the book. And then we've got Barry Malzberg. I haven't read any Barry Malzberg, but I hear good things. This is The Falling Astronauts. In pretty nice condition. It's in a rather grubby bag, but I expect the book underneath will be quite good. So the space program has finally lost its novelty, and a jaded public hardly notices another moon launch. Skillful PR men preserve the illusion that the missions have become routine. But astronaut Richard Martin can tell a different story, of panic in deep space, of crewmen pushed far beyond breaking point, of official indifference towards his own shattered life. Martin is effectively put under wraps until the pilot of a moon capsule loaded with nuclear weaponry goes berserk and a nightmare develops, threatening to engulf the world. A nightmare that only Martin could end. Which all sounds very exciting. I'm curious to know a couple of things. Firstly, what Malzberg's writing is like. I hear him spoken of in the same sort of glowing terms as Robert Silverberg, who I like very much, so that's encouraging. This is an extremely tight fit. Yeah, so underneath the baggie, it is in, you know, good / very good condition for a book that was published, or printed rather, in the early 70s, I would guess. Yeah, 75 actually. You know, can't be bad. Next is another book of which I've heard but haven't read. It's the D.G. Compton Chronicles, in an Arrow from mid-70s, I would guess. A mysterious explosion, a haunting, indefinable smell. Sitting quietly by a Cornish creek reading his favourite comic book, Rose's Varco hears the bang, catches a trace of the odour and understands nothing, which is hardly surprising since Roses has just witnessed the death of a time traveller lost in limbo between worlds. Had he known the truth, it would have terrified him, for that traveller was himself. So that sounds like a whole timey-wimey thing going on there. I do love a timey-wimey thing, so that will be good. I'll definitely be reading that at some point. And here's a book by Edmund Cooper, Who Needs Men? Rura Alexandra, Madam Exterminator, had recently graduated into a 25th century world where men had become biologically less important, where women could reproduce as they wished by cloning and parthenogenesis. Her task was simple in theory, if not in practice, to wipe out the last few thousand men who had taken refuge in the Highlands of Scotland, of all places. But an ambush near Loch Lomond led to rape and the killing of her fellow exterminators, and Dermot MacDermid, the last remaining rebel chieftain, proved too much of a fascination. So that sounds exciting. Apparently it is racy, with some nice touches typical of Mr. Cooper. Here's the other Keith Roberts that I found. I didn't find Purveyne, unfortunately, but I did find The Furies, which I included in a recent... which somebody was telling me about in the comments of a video that I did recently. And it seems to involve giant wasps. I'm not quite sure where the giant wasps come from. I think they're a mutation. America and Russia both explode huge H-bombs simultaneously. The tests go wrong, cracking the seabed, rupturing continents and engulfing cities. The Thames flattens into a floodplain and London is drowned. Now comes cosmic retribution. Giant wasps, monstrous and deadly. There's a word I don't know. Directed by a supernal intelligence. I wonder what that means. Invading a reeling world. In England, isolated guerrillas fight on. So it's a chilling story of... So it's a kind of a catastrophe / alien invasion mashup. Lots of action, mostly on the Salisbury Plain and in the Mendips. The encounters are with the with the big fucking wasps are done in piquant detail. I can't pronounce that word. A nicely thought out nightmare. So that's my second Keith Roberts book. I'll be very happy to read that at some point. And I picked this up as a curiosity because I think it is the progenitor of what's now more commonly known as the Martian Chronicles. I'm not sure if it's part of the Martian Chronicles or if it's just been renamed or what, but I'm sure there's a link between the two. Certainly is set on Mars. The Silver Locusts is Ray Bradbury's world-famous fantasy of man's earliest experiences on an alien planet. Bear with, let me compare it to the book that I have, Martian Chronicles. Hold on. So let's see. Okay, yeah, so it's the same. It's got the same short stories / chapters / connecting tissues in it. So it's just been renamed. So originally published as the Silver Locusts, and then later as the Martian Chronicles. So this Silver Locust copy, though, was published in 1977, printed in 1997. Wow, printed in 1977. But it's a book from the 50s, and the other copy that I have, which is labelled Martian Chronicles, is from 1970, although it's a US edition. So maybe that's it. Maybe it was published as the Silver Locust in the UK initially, and then the Martian Chronicles in the US. If you know which way around it goes, then do let me know in the comments. I'm intrigued to know. So now I have 2 copies of the exact same book, but it's interesting to have them with different names. Well, that's what I'm telling myself anyway. Right, what else have we got here? Going back a bit now, I did a top 10 military science fiction books, and I included a book that I hadn't actually read, but liked the sound of, which was Hammers Slammers by David Drake, sadly recently deceased, which is a affliction which seems to be commonly affecting science fiction writers recently. There were several very well-known authors gone recently, unfortunately. So this has an introduction by Jerry Pournelle, apparently. So this is I think I'm right in saying that it's short stories. Yeah, short stories following a troupe of kind of futuristic tankmen who go round about the place blowing shit up, I think. Bangy, crashy military sci-fi. And then I found in very nice condition a Del Rey copy of Hal Clement, Cycle of Fire. Has a rather excellent cover illustration. Niles Kruger was the Earthman, a castaway with a smashed spaceship on the parched surface of the inhospitable planet Ab-Your-Man. Well, I can't read this bit because it's a bit ripped off of the back cover. Is an alien. They would both die. Typically, Niles the human opted to do something about it. Typically, Dar, who knew the day, date, and hour of his death in advance, opted to do nothing. Which of them was right? Or perhaps both of them were. That sounds like the plot to Enemy Mine, which was a movie in the 80s starring, who the hell was it? Oh my goodness. Can't remember. That I enjoyed. So similar sort of idea. I don't think this was an influence of that, especially. Maybe it was. And then I picked up a Perry Rhodan book. I'm not particularly collecting these, but if I see them and they're in half decent condition, I'll buy them. There were only 30 something, I'm not sure if it's 33 or 35 or 36 or something of them published in England by Orbit Books. And they are, apparently the series got much better as it went on, and there are hundreds and hundreds, thousands even of Perry Rhodan stories now. They were published in kind of like a magazine, a hybrid magazine type book format in Germany, and they're very slender, almost kind of novella length books in this format. And then I found a Jack Vance book, which someone, might have been Steve Andrews over at Outlaw Bookseller, recommended to me, which I was pleased to find, which is Trullian Alaster 2262. It might have been in the context of me saying that I wanted to tick Jack Vance off my list of shame at some point this year. Trullian, World 2262 of the Alaster Cluster, a beautiful water world of fens, mists, idyllic islands set in clear oceans whose teeming richness provide food for the taking. The Trill are a carefree, easy-living race, but violence enters their lives during the raids of the Starmenters, freebooting galactic pirates whose short, perilous lives are based on the worship of adventure, rape and pillage. And then there's the planet-wide game of Hazard, which the Trill's ferocious passion for gambling drives them to risk all, even life itself, on the hazardous water chessboard gaming fields. Their prize, of course, the virginal body of the beautiful Shirl Maiden, the body any Trill is willing to die for. So that recommendation actually might have come when I was looking at ocean worlds in one of my recent books looking at kind of science fiction ideas or tropes or plot devices. I don't recall where it came from, but it came, and now I have a copy, which is awesome. So I found Piers Anthony Ox, which is one of a trilogy, I think. I'm not sure which order they come in, if Ox is the first, second or third. Let's see if I can find out. Doesn't give us any clue. Actually, I think it will be the third. So the first two are Omnivore and Orn, I think. Let's see, blah, blah, blah. Even the mantas were threatened in the hostile world, dominated by savage robot machines. Trapped in an alternative dimension, the group's only hope of escape lay with the being that they called Ox, an amorphous telepathic pattern of energy whose infinite power could destroy as easily as deliver. As rich in scientific detail as it is in breathtaking excitement, says somebody on the back. Oh yeah, okay, it says on the front here, the third book in one of science fiction's most remarkable trilogies, begun in Omnivore and Orn. So let's have it. That would be interesting. I found, to go with my standalone Alien, I found Aliens, which is the novelisation of the much bangier, crashier sequel with the Space Marines. And this is in pretty nice condition. And slightly gratuitous purchase because I already have it in the omnibus edition with the other two, but nice to have it in a separate copy. Then I got what I'm hoping is an upgrade, Planets for Sale by A. Van Vogt. I do have a copy of it, and I think in the same Panther format. Let's just see. It's exactly the same. So this is the one I just got. This is one that I already have. This one is actually in really nice condition. It's not spine faded or creased, and it's got very few little in the way of chips. Whereas this one has it's not creased on the spine. It's unbroken, but it does have a lot more chips on the spine. There's so this actually may not be an upgrade at all, but for £1 it was worth taking the risk. And I've got another Brian Stableford, which is Wild Blood's Empire, which is the Daedalus Mission 3. So I've got the first two books, so it was good to find this one. I'm not sure how many there are in total, but I now have the first three anyway. The colony was successful. That was evident as soon as the recontact ship Daedalus had landed. It was successful, prosperous, and everything was due to the work and genius of J. Wildblood, biochemist and planetary leader. This world now bore the name of its benefactor, and it was truly his empire, with a grateful, hard-working people heeding every wish of his descendants. But the suspicious scientific minds of Daedalus's special crew were very uneasy. Was Wildblood's empire all it seemed, or was there a structure invisible to the eye which spelled out something a lot more blood-curdling? And then I've got Intangibles Inc. and Other Stories by Brian Aldiss in a rather jazzy corgi. It looks like it would be from the 70s, early 70s, 25p. 1971, in fact. Intangibles Inc. were represented by a small man with spectacles and a long face. And he travelled about selling his product to people who didn't really know what an intangible was, but once they had one, once their little man had left an intangible in their homes, it was surprising how it slowly began to dominate their lives. So this has 5 novellas in it, 5 longish short stories, I guess. It's got Neanderthal Planet, Randy's Syndrome, Sender Victorious, and Since the Assassination as well. I have a feeling I might already have a copy of this, but I like the cover, so fuck it. Then I think what must be the first collection of Hugo winners by Isaac Asimov. There are several, and in a very nice vintage Penguin science fiction for 4 and 6, which would have been from the mid-60s. I think it's unbroken spine, it's unchipped, it's weighty, the paper's a good quality paper, and this was published in 1964, printed in 64. Not quite mint, but it's not far off, so I was happy to get that. Then I bought a Christopher Evans book. I think it's the same Christopher Evans as this one, Mortal Remains. But I can't be sure. Let me see if it gives a list of his books in this one. Yes, it does. So this was his debut novel, in fact, Capella's Golden Eyes, which was, this one's published by Granada, and it's from 1980, so quite a way back. I think this one was, 95. So there's 15 years separate these two. So Capella's Golden Eyes, let's see what it says. For over a century, the human colonists on the planet Gaia have prospered under the guidance of the Mithreni, some friendly aliens presumably. But when David arrives in the capital Helixport and makes contact with the aliens, he begins to learn the terrifying truth about them. From that moment on, he is in mortal danger, for the Mithreni, far from being silent benefactors, may turn out to be the deadliest of cruel dictators. So good things are said about it by important people in the back, so I think that's probably quite a good debut. Another Fontana, it's quite a nice format, by John Brunner, The Long Result. It's possible I have another copy of this, but again, for £1 it seemed churlish not to buy it if it's in good condition. when racial hatred turns to murderous menace. First, a rocket ship loses its engines on takeoff and is destroyed, and on board is an important extraterrestrial visitor. Next, someone slams into the sealed vehicle used for transporting aliens around the lethal atmosphere of Earth. And then the vital controlled environment for the Tau Cetian delegation is sabotaged. Oxygen leaks in and the aliens are burnt half alive. Even if it means brutal murder, the Stars of the Man League is determined to shatter the harmony between Earth and civilizations and other planets, and to keep mankind supreme amongst the alien life forms. Only one man can stop them, a man who unknowingly nurses a viper in his bosom. I don't know if that's a literal viper or a metaphorical one. I guess I'll find out. All right, here's the other new writings in science fiction book that I picked up, which is a wacky cover from the 70s. This might be a reprint because they're really wacky covers. Oh no, I lie, it's from 1968. It has a story by M. John Harrison. Oh, well, M. John Harrison's the only one that I've heard of. But it was one of the ones that I'm missing, so that's all cool in the gang. And then I've got Algis Budrys' Rogue Moon, which was a book that I featured in a video some months back about stories set on the moon. So this qualifies. Why did the alien formation on the dark side of the moon destroy all those who entered it? Its secrets could never be learned unless investigators had found a way of avoiding these fatal false moves within its structure. Barker, unafraid of death, seemed to be the ideal man to find out. For a technique had been discovered whereby each time he died he could be revived and made to press on deeper into the mystery, and his preoccupation with suicide was matched with by that of his project director, an obsession with scientifically controlled murder. So I having piqued my interest when I was researching for that video, I'm really pleased to have a copy of it. I don't think I have one already, so it's in nice condition, unbroken spine, no chips to speak of, in nice nick, and it would have been from the late 70s, 1980 in fact, in the Fontana, but originally published in 1960. That is the last one, so that's the last of the book haul for a little while. I'm trying not to be quite so profligate as I was last year, but there will definitely be book buying, and there will definitely be another book haul, maybe another one later this month, we'll see. But for now, thank you for watching as always, and until next time, goodbye.